me give you guys kind of like the context for today's Q&A. So for starters, right, we're going to be talking about vertical leaps / increasing speed. Great question, Brian Malcolm, that you asked. Let me do this real quick. There we go. Then we're going to be going into Santos questions about carbs versus net carbs. Then we're going to be going into Chad's question about too much protein, which is, I'm glad somebody asked that, because, there are diets that we'll talk about where it's all protein based, and I'm not typically the biggest fan of them. And I'll, obviously address that as we progress more into this. Bill, you asked a great one about difference in proteins. And then we're going to finish up with Luke, who asked me on Instagram about active recovery. Cool. So Brian Malcolm, I think you stepped away from that. There he is. Brian, take the floor, man. Ask your questions about the vertical leap and how to increase speed. Just go ahead and ask you just like how you did in the
Yeah, so it's March Madness, and I love basketball, and it's always been kind of a weak thing of mine was so best exercises for vertical leap, and also best exercises for increasing speed.
I love it, man. Love it. Really good questions. So anything where you're bringing I want to make it broad, but I also want to make it specific, right? Like that's
Yeah,
what I want these whiteboards to be, is like a learning experience for everybody. So that way they can take away from it. So think about it in terms of this, Brian. Anytime you're bringing your knee to your chest, you're going to be helping out with the movement, right? In terms of like increasing somebody's vertical leap. So what is a form of bringing your knees to your chest? Do you know any off the top of your head?
but plyometric type stuff where you jump like burpees. If you did the one variation where you show me jumping up with.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Okay.
knees to chest, right? So think about it in terms of this, a knees to chest and something that's explosive, right? So in terms of how that might look, you said burpees, right? Which
Yeah.
are, hardcore in a nutshell, but they definitely get the job done. Other things like box jumps.
Okay.
We also got single leg hops, right? So it's like, don't also focus on just 2 feet, right? You can focus on doing a single leg hop as well. They're advanced, they're hard to do. But then also just regular high jumps. So don't think in terms of like getting on top of a bench or a box, just as high as you can, explosive. But then going off the other side is broad jumps, right? So now instead of you just jumping in straight up high, focus on jumping also as far out as you can. And all this is going to do is just help with explosive movement, because what you asked was a very specific exercise or a specific movement, which is like a vertical leap. So it's like anytime you're performing the exercise, it's going to help you in that. It's like if someone wants to get better at shooting free throws, what would you recommend they do, Brian?
Shoot free throws.
Exactly, right? And so it's just like any form of variation, right? Maybe you can do a fadeaway. Maybe you can do just like, I don't know, a different variation of a shot, but it's the same concept of like the ball is trying to get inside the hoop, right? Same concept with this, right? When increasing the vertical leap. And that's why I like the question, because your question was awesome, because I want everybody to understand like how easy it is to get in better shape or to focus on a specific exercise or performance that they want to improve on, where it's the model KISS, keep it simple, stupid, right? Where it's like you don't need to do crazy things. You just need to focus on the movement, right? In a nutshell. Another thing that you can do is like tuck jumps, right? So that would be like your burpee variation that you kind of mentioned. So instead of you going down the ground, like you might want to just, hey, jump up, bring your knees to your chest. And then lastly, mountain climbers. Because think about it, right? It's the variation of your knees that's coming up to your chest. You can be doing that on the ground. And a lot of people can focus on that, right? Where it's a little bit easier, in terms of like the jumping. If somebody's, overly obese or anything like that, or they're not athletic, hey, they might go up, but coming down might be a hard fall, right? They might hurt their ankle, they might hurt their knees, something like that. But a mountain climber, obviously, somebody can progress at that a little bit more. Does that answer the question about the vertical leap?
Yeah.
Cool. What was the next question now?
How do you increase your speed and
Increase.
specifically your sprint speed, I guess,
Yeah, I
specifically,
kind of figured
you know?
that.
Yeah.
Um, so it's the same thing, right? In terms of like shooting the free throw, focus on the shot. But now I want to put ball in your court, right? Because this is what makes it so much fun coaching you guys is when I ask you guys questions, you guys answer, you guys are retaining X amount of more information, you know, as opposed to me just telling you. So what ways do you think you can increase your speed?
Well, first, I think number one is find a coach that can teach you form because that's sort of my biggest issue when I watch an actual sprinter run versus how I run. I feel like I'm more like my knees aren't, I don't feel like I have a good form of running, if that makes sense. But
Okay.
to answer just in specifics, just run sprints is my guess and progress them up from, shorter distances to longer distances, I'm guessing. Like starting off with like, 40, I guess maybe a 20-yard dash, I guess, and then work up to 40 and then maybe do 60s. I really don't know. I guess that's how I would look at it.
Okay. No, that was good. Here, let me go off of what you said first about the form too, right? So
Okay.
don't compare yourself to somebody else. So, for example, right, let's bring this right back to basketball because I'm more familiar with that than like sprinters or anything like that. Um, Michael Jordan was the greatest in the game. Same with Kobe Bryant. Same with LeBron James. They all have three different styles of how they play the game, though. You know, so
Yeah.
like, don't look at what somebody else is doing and try to mimic off them because remember, your body type is completely different. You know, so it's like you got to keep that in mind. Um, in terms of like a movement, let's say a bench press or a squat, anything like that. Some people might squat differently than myself. Some people might bench differently than myself, but regardless, it's hey, are you working on the muscle groups? What is more comfortable for your body type? So, keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of running the sprints, yes, right? So for starters, right, running sprints, but there's also variations to that. I think I saw in the comments Gabe talked about parachute sprint, which is great because I was going to say anything of resistance, right? So any form of resistance, if it's a parachute, that's awesome. If it's a um heavy or excuse me,
Higher.
a weighted bench, a weighted vest, you can use that as well. I would just be mindful just because like my weighted vest is 60 pounds. I don't have the best knees, right? So it's like I think that would be very hard and taxing on my joints having that much extra resistance. So find something that's more comfortable for you, and if you don't have a weighted vest, grab a backpack, fill it up with some books, right? And a blanket around it so it's not uncomfortable on your back. And maybe try that, but any form of resistance. And then also, this is probably the biggest thing, hill sprints.
Hill sprints. Yeah.
Because don't think in terms of resistance. Hey, I'm just going from point A to point B, right? Like this. That resistance could be going up as well. And so this, you're not going to need the parachute. You're not going to need the, weighted vest, anything like this. You're literally just going against gravity at that point, you know? Um, some other things too that I'm a big fan of. This is what's kind of helping me train for my runs that's coming up. Obviously, sprinting is completely different from long distance, but hey, sprint a minute or 30 seconds, whatever comfortable for you. Maybe build up on it. Walk for a minute or 30 seconds. Sprint, walk, sprint, walk, and just keep on doing it in variations of like that. If you just continue to do that, make those tweaks, but like bigger picture in all this, regardless if it's um increasing the speed, regardless if it's a better vertical, leap, regardless if it's a squat, a bench, a deadlift, anything like that, the bigger picture that I want you to understand is like, how do we get better in this? We perform it more frequently. That's it. Mind muscle connection, getting more comfortable with the reps and doing it more and more and more. You'll always progress 10 years faster. It's like um, somebody can teach you, let's say through like, I don't know, a virtual course of, how to drive a car. And you can go to driver's ed school, right? And people are sharing with you videos about how to drive a car, but you're always going to learn how to drive a car through actually driving a car. See what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, if you keep that as well as everybody else with the same mindset, whatever it is that you want to get better on, you will get a lot better on it way faster. Does that help answer your question?
Absolutely.
Cool. Cool. Santo, let's go to you
Yep.
next, baby. What's your
All right.
question?
it was about carbohydrates. As it being one of the macros that we track. Sometimes I see on packaging for bread or whatnot, there's your actual carbs, and they say, it's 12 carbs, and it gives you a breakdown for 4 actual net carbs. Like, what's the difference?
I love it, man. Such a good question because I'm going to give you that answer right off the bat, and then I'm going to go into like what matters the most. Because obviously, with this being on, in the Facebook group, everything like that, and somebody else that might be brand new to our coaching program, they might be watching the replay. I don't want them being worried about carbs. I know you're not, right? But like, I want to give some context and some clarity afterwards. So let's first go into this total carbs. Okay. So let's say you're looking on the back of a package, and let's say there is, I don't know, like 9 grams, right, for total carbs. But let's say going down the list, right, you happen to see 2 things, right? Fiber. And let's say fiber is 2 grams. And then let's say sugar alcohols. Let's say that is 3 grams. Okay. So your net carbs is going to be 4 grams. Because all you're doing is subtracting. Oh man, I was on such a roll with using this. There we go. I was so proud of myself. I'm like, oh man, I got this down fast now using this whiteboard. And then I jinxed myself. So this is the formula. Very simple, right? Very, very simple. So like I know a lot of people, right, in terms of if they're doing like a low carb or a ketogenic diet, right? Which in case anybody does not know a true ketogenic diet, it's different from a low carbohydrate diet. A ketogenic diet means you should be definitely tracking your macros because you want about 70 to 75% of your daily calories coming from fats, 20 to 25% coming from protein, and about 5% coming from carbohydrates, specifically like vegetables, something that's very, very low. Okay. So a lot of people, when they're like, oh, I'm doing keto, but I'm not tracking, it's like you think you're doing keto. You're just doing a low carbohydrate diet where you're just cutting out carbohydrates, which is like a similar variation of like Atkins diet. Not that keto is the end all be all, but it's just for simple sakes of like, hey, somebody should probably be doing it right if they're claiming to be doing it. And now, in terms of this, like bigger picture, like this does not mean anything to me, right? And it neither should to you, Santo, which you already know, as well as all the other members that's probably watching this right now. Meaning like carbs versus net carbs, it really shouldn't matter at all. Um, Obviously, like with fiber, with sugar alcohols, you might be storing a little bit more water retention, which is totally fine. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Carbohydrates, if you look at it in a nutshell, this is going to be good to just kind of help educate somebody. So we'll say fuel sources. Santa, I'll put you on the spot, man. What's the difference between carbs and fats when it comes to the fuel sources?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot for sure.
You can phone a friend.
I phoned Bill.
Bill, what's the difference between fats and carbs for fuel sources?
Can I phone a friend too?
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
gonna take a shot at it. And I don't know how right I'll be. I would guess that sort of fats burn faster and carbs burn longer. Is what I would say. But I don't. That's
You
just a
almost
guess.
had it right. You almost had it right. So fats are slow digesting. Okay. And then carbohydrates are fast digesting. So like that's the biggest thing I want everybody to know is that they're just 2 different fuel sources. Now, in terms of let's just say fats for fuel is going to equal your ketones. And then carbs for fuel is going to equal glycogen. Okay. So this is where people like miss out the ball on terms of like why they have a negative relationship with carbohydrates is because, it gets stored as glycogen within the body, which is stored within your muscles. So glycogen is like, think about it in terms of like water weight almost, you know, and your body needs water. Okay. Your body's over 70% water anyways. It needs it. To help out with lipolysis, right? The burning of body fats, right? Your body needs carbohydrates. It needs water, right? To help out with just overall health, overall functions of your organs. Your body needs more water, right? All these different functions, right? Of, building muscle, having a faster metabolism, more energy, more focused, losing body fat, all boils down to just having more water within the body. So if you're cutting down the carbohydrates, somebody might see the number on the scale go down and instantly claim they're losing body fat, but that does not have to be the case. They could be just losing water weight. If you don't believe me, I always like using this analogy because it always makes a lot of sense. If you drop your phone, right, into a pool, you want to take your phone and put it into a bowl of rice. That rice is going to extract the water right out of the phone, get it to work again, fingers crossed, right? So you don't need to go buy a whole new iPhone. Works the same way in the body. So if you cut out your carbohydrates, you're going to be losing a lot of glycogen that's stored within the muscles, stored within the body, which is once again, like not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that you got to kind of take it with a grain of salt, because if anybody's ever done a water cut, you guys know when you cut your carbohydrates, you feel like crap, right? You have no strength, no energy. Your body, right, likes glycogen, plain and simple. Why do you think for like runners, they have like literally like if you're doing a marathon or anything like that, little packets of just sugar, right? That hey, these runners, these sprinters, right? They're taking in the midst of their long distance runs. It's because that's instantly getting stored the fast digesting, right? Fuel sources as glycogen to help you prolong and keep on going. On the flip sides, right? Fats, ketones, right? So in order to have ketones going out throughout your body, you will have to either fast or have to cut out your carbohydrates for X period of time to get to the ketosis state. And typically the aversion rate of like, let's say, hey, I'm primarily using carbohydrates as energy sources to now converting to ketones, it's a sticky situation. So some of the guys that's doing the fasting challenge with me, you guys know, like, hey, you're probably feeling a little bit dizzy, probably feeling a little bit lightheaded, right? Some might say that like the keto flu or anything like that. You're in this transition state, right? Of like, hey, your body's not having any much glycogen within its system. It's in a fasted state. It's in a low carbohydrate state where it's burning through all of them. And now it's transitioning into ketones, right? Is there a end all be all in terms of what works better than the other? I would say it like this. It's whatever you can stick with long term. The majority of the people can stick with something, right? Like let's say a fast or let's say a low carbohydrate diet for a few short weeks or a few short months. But as you guys know, this is life. Life likes to throw us curveballs, stress. And a lot of people struggle with emotional eating, binge eating, anything like that, where they want to rely on comfort food. Nothing wrong with that at all, right? But don't blame, right, something for, oh, this is the diet that's going to help me get in shape because I lost X amount of weight. Focus on something that's going to be sustainable. There's a lot of guys out there that, hey, you can get ripped six-pack abs, eating tons and tons and tons of carbohydrates, well over 300 plus. There's a lot of guys out there that can get ripped six-pack abs, eating, let's say, under 30 grams of carbs, and following a low carbohydrate diet. It's whatever one works best for that individual that they can stick with long term, you know? Santo, does that help out?
Very much. There's a
Cool.
lot of information there. So, but to put it in the simplest terms, is if you're tracking, carbs is one of the things you're tracking. You want to track your total carbs, correct?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I mean, I'll say it like this, right? Like the only time I ever track carbohydrates is when I'm doing a water cut. That's it, right? Like
Yeah.
other than that, I'm never checking carbohydrates ever or fats, right? I try to make it as simple as possible for myself. I literally, the same thing that I teach you guys, same thing that I apply by myself. And that's why it's fat loss habits, right? Where it's, hey, don't eat over X amount of calories and have at least the bare minimum amount of protein. If one day like high carbs fall into place and the next day it's low carbs fall into place, really doesn't matter at all. I typically eat like, and I actually found this out from a study that most people typically have around the same 5 to about 10 meals a week, right? So what does that mean? Like your dinners are pretty much always the same. Your breakfasts are pretty much all the same. Your snacks are pretty much all the same. And this might be, for you guys, but also anybody that's listening that's not following on our program, where it's like, think about what I'm saying. If most people, right, is let's just say 1 through 10 meals. Okay. Or no, 5 through 10 meals. And let's just say on average, 6 out of the meals, right? And I hate using this word, but we're just going to use it for the simple sake of this. We're going to say these are bad meals, right? So what is a bad meal? Something low in protein, high in sugar, high in processed, foods, crap, not good for you, right? We'll just call it up in that category. And let's just say like there's only 4 that they're actually having that's good. So this is how simple it is to easily make a lifestyle change. Start off small and focus on maybe making this 4 and making this 6. So it means like, hey, one of those meals, if let's say you're going to McDonald's every day for lunch or whatever the case may be, right? We'll just use that. McDonald's every day for lunch, and you're typically getting a whatever a burger is called there, double pounder, double quarter, something like that, right? You're getting a burger, you're getting a fry, you're getting, a pop. Well, hey, why don't we just instead go to Chick-fil-A? Might be, spending a little bit more extra money, but regardless, if you're going to live longer, if you're going to feel more confident because you're losing body fat, if you're going to be healthier, potentially get off your medications, that's priceless in a nutshell than spending an extra $5, right? And maybe we're getting a grilled chicken sandwich. And maybe instead of the fries, we're getting like a little yogurt. And instead of a pop, we're getting like a 0-calorie option. It's like, hey, all we did was make a few small tweaks, right? And like that typically leads to long-term success for most people. So it's like if most people struggle with eating 5 to 10 meals, right, that are typically the same, all you got to do is make some small little tweaks here and there. It's like, hey, if you find yourself, crashing on the kids' pantry, constantly eating the Scooby snacks, it's like switch it out for some protein bars. Switch it out for some, protein Pop-Tarts, right? Anything like that. Shoot, get some protein waffles and some Halo Top ice cream and some 0-calorie sugar, 0-calorie or 0 sugar chocolate syrup. Dude, that's the best, like, amazing snack right there. Pop some, protein waffles, Halo Top on top, sugar-free, right? Chocolate syrup on top. It's delicious, right? And it's going to crave that sweet tooth, right? It's going to get you what you're looking for. So does that help answer that more in detail?
Absolutely, man. That was awesome. Golden.
Thanks, man. I'm trying. If only I was good at using the eraser as much as I am using the scribble. I had a stylus, and I kid you not, I was about to throw it in the trash, but I realized I can just return it on Amazon. That thing made me so mad. It was like from looking at the computer to looking at the stylus, it was way off, and I was like, this is just giving me a headache. All right, Chad asked about protein, which is good because like you guys just heard me say, I don't worry about carbs. I don't worry about fats. I focus on hitting a protein goal that helps me stay between like 10 and 15% body fat all year round. How do I keep it so simple? Right. But at the same time, you don't want to take something and then hold on, I got to mute Dennis. You don't want to take something and all of a sudden it like ends up being too bad for you. Right. So a lot of you guys might know this about carnivore. I've heard about the carnivore diet. Typically what that is pretty much all meats, right? All protein. You got some eggs in there in the equation as well, right? Some healthy fats, but it's pretty much all meats. Now, a lot of people do that and actually see great results, but you have to look at it in terms of like, okay, what are you not getting from that? Well, hey, you're not getting a lot of micronutrients. You're not getting a lot of fiber context as well. There's some also, vitamins that you're not getting in terms of the context when it comes to that. I also just talked about, you guys heard me talked about carbohydrates and how, hey, they help fuel muscle glycogen, more strength, everything like that. So switching to just, hey, eating like this to now eating like this, all protein, it might not be necessarily the best thing for your diet, right? Because it might not be sustainable. Now, in terms of what I like to use and preach is about the 80-20 rule. And this is why I'm really glad Chad asked this in the Facebook group, which is, hey, how much protein is too much? So for me, I always like to say this, anything past 1.5, it's not that it's too much, but it's unnecessary. So let's just say body weight for this individual is 200 pounds. And let's just say protein multiplied by 1.5. Let me get my handy dandy calculator out real quick.
300.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So 300 grams. Okay. So is this a bad thing to have? Absolutely not, right? But it's unnecessary. And the reason why it's unnecessary, I can't find my pen anymore. There we go. The reason why it's unnecessary is because at the end of the day, the bare minimum, I guess I should write this out, right? The minimum equals body weight times 0.8. So what do I mean by the minimum? Well, hey, that's the minimum amount of protein that you should be having each and every day. So that way you're not losing muscle. And this is why I'm not like the biggest fan of like following like a ketogenic diet or following like intermittent fasting or anything like that, where if you're not eating what's recommended, hey, you might see some weight loss, but that weight loss might be in terms of loss of muscle, which will potentially slow down your metabolism. A good mindset, train of thought here is like, think about taking a road trip. So Santo, with you over in, Michigan, you want to come over here to Ohio. If you only filled up your gas tank maybe once, I don't know if you'll make it this far, right? So think about it in terms of like your body. Hey, we're all trying to get six-pack abs, have more energy, have more confidence. But if we're only filling up our fuel sources once, we might not make it that far. We might be just rolling around on fumes, eventually slow metabolism or car broken down on the side of the road. So like a good mindset is like, hey, focus on eating the bare minimum that you should be in terms of protein at least, right? We're not going to talk about calories specifically, but in terms of protein. What I always recommend, right, is just take your body weight, multiply it by 1. Okay. That's going to give you a good sense of like, hey, a good focal point, what to aim for, what to strive for. If you want to do more, do more, you know? I weigh about 197 right now. I typically have anywhere from 220 to 250 grams of protein. And could I have the 300 grams of protein? Sure. Is that going to kill me? Absolutely not. Somebody might think in terms of this. Mark, I'll actually put you on the spot for this real quick because you did a real good job diving into this on one of the podcasts that we did. Somebody might think too much protein is bad for their kidneys. Do you want to kind of do a deep dive in that?
Yeah, I mean, they did a bunch of research into that and they found that it's complete bunk. Your body may not use all the protein at once, but it'll just store it and use it as needed. You're not gonna like hurt yourself by going over on the protein.
Yeah. And it was typically the people that already had like health problems and health concerns, right? Like,
Right, exactly.
yeah, it's like
Yeah,
somebody that I was
yeah,
gonna
that
say,
they had like indicators already, so that's like saying like, you have an illness and now we're giving you protein and well the illness is, from the protein. No, you already had an illness.
yeah, you got somebody 300 pounds, right? They're very sedentary. They're high blood pressure, high cholesterol. They, go to just eating, fast food every single day. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, they start taking some protein powders or some eating more protein. And like they instantly might see somebody say, oh, too much protein is bad for you. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's right. Like it's bad for me. And go to the doctors. Oh, I'm dealing with this. Oh, it's the protein. It's like, no, like it was underneath the surface, the lifestyle change that you, right, made it bad for yourself. So thank you, Mark, for diving into that. Now, lastly, the reason why I said, is this being, too much, too bad? Not necessarily a bad thing. I just think it's unnecessary because I'm the biggest fan of this right here. I live off this, I breed off this, and this is honestly why I feel like I stay lean all year round. The 80-20 rule. Most guys, right, and girls, anybody in general, they deal with such a negative mindset when it comes to if they're trying to follow a meal plan or trying to follow a diet or a nutritional protocol. If they steer ways a little bit and maybe go out to eat or have some cheesecake or donuts, whatever the case may be, they instantly look at it as the end all be all. I just fell off the wagon and I'm not going to have success for the rest of my life. Wrong mindset to have, you know? I live off the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, I'm eating whole, healthy foods. 20% of the time, I'm having my sanity foods, plain and simple. As long as I'm sticking within my calorie range, as long as I'm eating the bare minimum of protein, for me, I always recommend, like I said, minimum for my body type, 1 gram, right? For anybody else, especially a beginner, 0.8 grams. But as long as I'm sticking within my protein goal, as long as I'm sticking with obviously my calorie range, I'm in a good sweet spot. And it gives you clarity because now you have peace of mind saying that I can actually follow with something long term. Mark, you went on a cruise and you smashed, and didn't you come back from that cruise losing weight?
Absolutely. Yeah. I came off the cruise less than I went on, and it was for a variety of reasons. One was I stayed active, right? I mean, big ship, lots of walking. Two, I made use of the gym, anytime we were not, going on to land. And three, I kind of, said to myself, I'm gonna, employ like the 80/20 rule on the ship, meaning like, okay, so I want to smash dinner and dessert. Maybe breakfast is a little, more in line with what I typically eat, or maybe lunch is a little leaner. It doesn't, I would break it up differently each day, but that still meant, hitting the ice cream machine on the back to the room at night with the kids or whatever it was, because we were on vacation and I was there to enjoy it with my family. But you can make it work if you just think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Santo, a few years back, you and I did our famous donut and scotch challenge, right? And didn't you lose some weight that week?
I did 4 pounds.
Yeah, so if anybody's watching this on YouTube or Facebook or even in our community group and you're wondering, oh man, like how do I lose weight, and I like alcohol, I like bourbon, you could probably talk to anybody inside of our coaching program, right? In fact, there's a video stumbling around on YouTube about that, right?
Sure is. I got to say that this 80/20 rule for me is a lifesaver because not only is it like a physical thing, it's a mental thing for me. Like I'm employing that rule allows me to, cheat, if you will. I don't like to use that word, but I can do like exactly what Mark was saying, and but I don't get, I don't get stressed out about it. I don't get all this anxiety anymore. It just
Yeah.
it's a game changer.
Yeah, the biggest thing like that I want you guys to know and everybody that listens to the podcast and watches the videos is this word right here, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid, right? It doesn't matter what you do as long as you continue to do it. That's it. So like Santa, you just hit the nail on the head. Like, hey, I was able to do this. I applied the 80/20 rule. It also helps me, clear my anxiety. I don't have to worry about it, stress about it anymore. Like that's what you want because it's a huge weight off your shoulder. You guys know, right? Stress, right? The number one killer in anything. The reason why most people are suffering bad health, probably is stress, right? And it's like it just eats away at it, eats away, eats away, eats away at them. And it's like unless you learn how to clear your mind, unless you learn how to focus on some simple things that's going to take that stress off your plate, you're always going to have it. No matter where you go, it's always going to be there. So focus on, hey, what are the things that I can make the adjustments about, but as also it's sustainable, Bill, we're going to go to your next question. Would you mind asking this?
Yeah, my question was, I get the amount of protein that we're supposed to sort of shoot for each day, but is there a difference between getting that number in via whole foods versus supplements or powders or bars or shakes or any of that stuff?
Yeah. So I'm going to give you, let's just use lean meats, fish, eggs, Greek yogurt. So if anybody's wondering like, oh man, how do I hit my protein goal? I'm literally giving you guys like the playlist right here. Cottage cheese. What else am I missing? Anything on here from Whole Foods?
That's yeah, I mean other shellfish, right? But that goes with fish.
Yeah, I think we're good on that. So let's
Yeah, I
do
think so
this.
too.
Let's do protein powders because like there's a lot. So we got like whey concentrate, we have whey isolate, casein protein, you have soy protein, you have pea protein, uh, egg white protein, there's beef protein, plant-based, hemp,
Collagen.
collagen, yep. And I think there's like almond protein. Like that's a big list, right? Of like all different types of like protein powders, everything like this. Now, to answer your question in the easiest sense, like which one wins between this one and this one? this one's always going to be your winner, right? Because it's whole foods, plain and simple, you know? It's going to be more beneficial for you. Now, with that being said, right, you got to take a step back, somebody's lifestyle. So it's like myself included, I don't have, first off, I don't have the time to be cooking all these different types of foods. I don't have enough patience also to be meal prepping. I'm not a big fan of that by any means. So I like using this to help me hit my goals. Okay. In terms of why this is more beneficial for you, well, think about it like this. Your body's going to take a lot longer and more, let's just say, thermic effective food, right? Don't want to overcomplicate this, but if somebody was going to be eating a piece of chicken breast or steak, right, and going through the whole digestion process and everything like that, they're going to be burning way more calories if we're going to be using that, as opposed to, let's say, just drinking a protein shake. You know, if let's say calories and protein are completely equal, the person over here is going to be activating more higher up on the thermic effect of food because they have to go through the whole entire digestion process, everything like that. Now, in terms of this, is this bad for you? By any means not. You know, I'm somebody that lives off, you know, anywhere from 2 to 4 scoops of protein powders a day, protein bars, anything like that. I would not recommend some things on this list, you know, but that's just me, right? Like, I'm not a big fan of casein. I'm not a big fan of soy. I'm not a big fan of like the beef protein. I just think it's weird. I'm not a big fan of plant-based just because I think it tastes horrible. I never had hemp. I never had almond before, but like some of these things on here, you know, like just a whey isolate is always going to be my go-to. You know, it's always going to be like my primary source just because um, I think whey concentrate, it's about 70 to 80% actually protein. There's obviously some other things included in that, but whey isolate is just filtered down another layer, you know, where it's about 90% protein. So I like that, as well as I'm lactose intolerant. So whey concentrate typically kind of upsets my stomach. But long story short, Bill, whole foods always win. But at the end of the day, it's what can help you hit your numbers the best and also efficient for your lifestyle where you can be consistent with. Do you have any other questions about that or want me to go into more detail?
No, it was good. I thought as much, but I just want a clarification. I appreciate it.
I think it's a great question to ask, man, just for anybody else that's watching this on, like I said, the Facebook group or YouTube, where they're like, they probably wondering the same thing, you know? All right, let's go into the last question that was asked from my dude Luke on Instagram. Oops. Active recovery. So you guys hear me talk about active recovery a lot. You guys hear me talk about recovery a lot, honestly, like sleep, everything like that. But like, what is active recovery? Well, the main three is this: walking, I would say foam rolling, and yoga. And the reason why these are like the main three is because at the end of the day, it's breaking up any kind of like, let's say, lactic acid. So if you guys are working out, if you guys are training hard, right, focusing on progressive overload, doing all the right things that you should be doing in terms of your training, there's going to be plenty of times where you're feeling sore, plenty of times where you're kind of feeling stiff, especially like, let's just say the older you get and, you know, the colder the weather comes, like it's very common. So it's like focusing on more active recovery is just going to help you feel better, you know, when it comes to breaking up the lactic acid, not feeling so tight all the time. It's obviously great for your muscles, obviously great for your joints, ligaments, everything like that. So like walking, foam rolling, yoga, all different things of this, where you're getting your body moving, but it's not at a certain rate where, let's just say, like it's an actual workout. It's something that's more therapeutic, depending on what you do. Obviously, yoga can be hard in a nutshell if you're doing something crazy, but regardless, it's still getting your body moving, but not necessarily taxing the muscles as if we're, let's say, using the weights and we're absolutely just crushing our muscles. Now, with that being said, there's also a bunch of other forms of active recovery. Swimming, hiking, light weight training, boxing even, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And the reason why I can also say that these are light forms of, let's say, recovery or active recovery is because someone could be swimming for a workout and somebody could be swimming like on the lazy river, just, you know, just relaxing, right? Just swimming, breaststroke, nothing crazy, nothing taxing. It's therapeutic for them, you know? Somebody could be hiking up your crazy mountain, you're right, absolutely killing it. Or somebody can be just going to some trails in the park, right? And that's considered a hike as well. Somebody could, let's say, you know, be crushing it in the gym, focusing on progressive overload for the weight training. And somebody could also be doing, let's say, a deload week, right? Obviously, you guys have probably done deloads weeks where it's like, hey, you're taking that time, you're still working out, but what are you doing? You're working out with the light reps, you're going through the motions, you're barely even breaking up a sweat. And it's, once again, it's a form of recovery. Boxing, somebody could be crushing on the heavy bag, right? Killing it, going as hard as they can, as fast as they can. Or somebody could be just working more on the fundamentals, right? So they're going through the motions, you know, but once again, they're not making it so taxing on themselves where, you know, it's a workout in a nutshell. And the reason why I'm a big fan of active recovery, it's because it helps you relieve so much stress from just like, let's say, the physical fitness side of things. You know, a lot of people think that stress is, you know, hey, stress at work, stress with bills, stress with, you know, relationship problems. Like those are all big issues, obviously. But like if your body, if you're not eating enough, you're in a state of stress. You know, if let's just say you have injuries, you know, your shoulders hurting, your back's hurting, your body's in a state of stress. If let's say you're dealing with a sickness, your body's in a state of stress, right? And all that stress is going to equal is to high amounts of cortisol. So like cortisol, the best way that you can look at it, because there's so many negative health factors. We're talking heart rate, you know, disease, we're talking strokes, we're talking high blood pressure, we're talking lack of sleep, we're talking about depression, anxiety, we're talking, you know, obesity, all these things, right? Because of stress. The way I want you guys to think about it is like if you have these different hormones in your body helping you lose body fat, helping you be more positive, helping you be more happier. And let's say these hormones are just like little factory workers. Okay. And let's say in the factory, fire alarm's going off. That means all the workers have to rush outside because nobody wants to die. So it's like, think in terms of your hormones, not properly moving around, not properly doing what it needs to be healthy, happier, more positive, more whatever the case may be, because there's so much stress going on in the body. So like things like, you know, yoga that I did earlier today, it's great, right? Because I'm tight, I'm constantly running, getting ready for this event. So it's like helping me just relieve that where I'm not dealing with so much lactic acid, inflammation in my joints, inflammation, you know, going on in my muscles for my strength training, all that stuff. You know, walking is also very therapeutic where it's great for obviously helping you, you know, release that lactic acid where once again, if somebody's, let's say, going through DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. So let's say they had a crazy leg workout and they haven't worked out in, let's say, I don't know, 2, 3 weeks. They might be dealing with that DOMS where, you know, the best thing for them to do the next day isn't to just sit around because their legs are all super sore and tight. They can barely walk up and down the stairs. It's to just go for a walk. It's going to break up that lactic acid. But what it's also doing is obviously helping you out with a mental and more emotional state as well, you know, where those simple things of active recovery can help you out with just getting more clarity in terms of your mindset as well.